I was the disgraced producer who forced his ex-wife to sign divorce papers in the freezing snow, a man the internet branded a heartless monster and the industry blacklisted. I truly believed our paths would never cross again, aside from the occasional tabloid article dragging my name through the mud. Yet, 3 years later, she rose from the wreckage to become the youngest Oscar-winning actress in Hollywood history, a global icon on every live broadcast. Meanwhile, I was in a chemo ward coughing up blood into a trash bin while watching her acceptance speech, ignoring my doctor's pleas to stop pushing myself just so I could go back to being a broke producer groveling for a new film. Behind that single sheet of paper, I hadn't signed her away. I had taken every debt, every disaster in my own life, and wagered them all as the collateral for her second chance. The year I divorced Olivia was the exact same year the public turned on her and tried to bury her career. Everyone called me a monster, cold, and utterly heartless, but I still forced her to sign those papers. Over time, she clawed her way out of the darkness to become Hollywood's newest golden girl and a celebrated Academy Award winner. For 3 years, I intentionally stayed in the shadows, convinced our lives would never intertwine again. That changed the day she finally saw me at my absolute lowest. The way she looked at me was filled with nothing but pure, unadulterated venom. She humiliated me in front of everyone, forcing a glass to my lips and pouring the liquid down my throat. I began to retch uncontrollably as thick, dark blood surged from my mouth. She merely offered a cold sneer, telling me this was the price I had to pay for my past betrayal. I didn't fight back, letting her treat me like her worst enemy. I was dying anyway, and if her venting this anger made her happy, it was enough for me. "You've been begging for this project, haven't you?" she asked. "Finish this bottle, and I'll sign the contract right now." I stared at the bottle of whiskey, filled nearly to the brim, while fighting the violent spasms in my gut. I forced a sycophantic smile for the producer, Kevin Vance. My hands were trembling as I reached out to take the bottle from him. With everyone watching, I began to chug the liquid fire. The moment the whiskey hit my stomach, a searing explosion of pain ripped through me. It was so intense that my entire body began to shudder uncontrollably. When I went for my chemo session last week, my oncologist, Dr. Ben Carter, practically begged me to check in. He warned me that at the rate my condition was deteriorating, I could collapse and stop breathing at any moment if I didn't start systematic treatment immediately. I ignored him, ripping the needles and monitoring equipment right off my skin. I pulled out the tubes and fled down the hospital corridor while the doctor was still shouting after me. His voice echoed through the long hallway as I made my escape. I just needed this one last project. If this show was a success, I could leave this world without any regrets. I clenched my fists and gritted my teeth, pulling the contract from my briefcase and flipping it open to the signature page. I laid the document solemnly in front of Kevin Vance. When he made no move to take it, I quickly grabbed a black pen, uncapped it, and bowed nearly 90 degrees. I held the pen out to him with both hands. "Mr. Vance, please, I just need your signature," I said. "Thank you so much for taking the time to see me." Kevin Vance took the pen, but his brow furrowed as he flipped through the pages of the contract multiple times. My heart skipped a beat as I watched him, wondering if I should offer an explanation. Before I could utter a word, he pretended his hand slipped, letting the contract slam onto the floor with a loud thud. I forced a quick smile and moved to pick it up, bowing apologetically. Just as I leaned down, his polished leather shoe stepped directly onto the document. He looked down at me with a triumphant, mocking sneer. "Olivia, you're here," he said. At the sound of her name, my grip on the corner of the contract tightened involuntarily, and my entire body went rigid as if I'd been turned to stone. I tried to push myself up using the table, but my legs gave out and I slammed hard onto the floor. Instinctively, I glanced toward the door. The woman standing there was Olivia, and she was walking straight toward me. Her eyes were filled with nothing but undisguised disgust and contempt. She stopped beside me, looking down from her height with a voice as cold as ice and dripping with irony. "Lucas Miller, so it really is you. Life hasn't been too kind to you since you left me, has it?" Olivia Hayes stared down at me, every syllable soaked in resentment and pure hate. I remained sprawled on the floor, struggling to force a smile onto my face. "Miss Hayes, your legendary rise is something I've heard quite a lot about," I rasped. "I know every studio in town is desperate to work with you. Please, just give her company a chance. We'll agree to whatever terms you set." By the time I finished speaking, my face ached from the forced smile, and the burning sensation in my stomach was churning violently. The agony was so intense that I had only one thought left. I needed to get away from this humiliating scene as fast as possible. Olivia used to despise seeing me act so subservient, often saying it stripped me of my dignity. I held on to a sliver of hope that her disgust would make her want me out of her sight immediately, so she would just dismiss me. As expected, she quickly looked away in revulsion, but then she sat down in the chair next to me. She picked up an unopened bottle of aged whiskey, waved it lazily in front of my eyes, and spoke in a nonchalant tone. "Finish this whole thing, and I'll consider giving you a chance," she said. I looked up at the large, full bottle of whiskey, and my stomach immediately did a violent somersault. I clamped my hand over my mouth, desperately fighting back the bile and nausea rising in my throat. I let out a weak, forced chuckle and waved my hands at her. "Miss Hayes, I just finished a bottle. If I have to go through another one, it might actually be the end of me." Her eyelids flickered as a flash of disappointment crossed her face, followed immediately by bone-chilling hatred. She raised her hand and pointed toward the door, and the bodyguard stationed there marched over instantly. Without a single word, he pinned me down and forced me on my knees before Olivia. She gazed down at me with nothing but mockery and loathing. She picked up an opener and popped the cap off the whiskey bottle with a sharp click. She gripped my chin firmly with one hand while the other raised the bottle, ruthlessly pouring the liquid into my mouth. "Lucas Miller, you owe me this, every single drop," she hissed. Olivia Hayes knew better than anyone that I couldn't handle my liquor. Despite knowing it would cause a medical crisis, she proceeded to force the entire bottle of whiskey down my throat in front of everyone. She didn't let go of my chin until the bottle was bone dry, and her face even held a glimmer of predatory satisfaction from her revenge. As soon as she released me, my stomach felt like it had been set on fire, churning with explosive agony. I clamped my hand over my mouth and stumbled toward the restroom. The moment I collapsed by the toilet, the contents of my stomach surged out uncontrollably in violent, rhythmic waves. The pain was so sharp it felt as if a meat grinder were turning inside my abdomen, slowly shredding my stomach to pieces. I caught a glimpse of the dark, nearly black blood splattered against the white porcelain and hurriedly reached for the flusher. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Olivia standing in the doorway, watching me with an expression full of pure disgust and boredom. I quickly wiped the blood from my mouth with my sleeve and leaned against the wall to pull myself up. "I finished the bottle," I managed to say. "Regarding the collaboration with our studio, I'll have my team contact your agent as soon as possible. Miss Hayes, thank you for giving me this opportunity today. Truly, thank you." I leaned against the door frame and gave her a slight nod of gratitude. Suddenly, she lunged forward, grabbing my suit lapels and slamming me hard back against the frame. She leaned in close, her eyes burning with a fierce, internal fire. "Where were you 3 years ago when the whole world turned against me?" she demanded. "When everyone on the internet was tearing me apart, you were the one who threw the divorce papers in my face and forced me to sign. Back then, I actually thought you would at least be living a better life than me. I never imagined you would end up looking this pathetic. Are you surprised by how things turned out? I've won 3 international awards now. I'm an A-list star. Not only was I not kicked out of the industry, I've made a glorious comeback. Lucas Miller, tell me, do you regret leaving me all alone in that hell? You only cared about saving your own skin, didn't you?" Olivia glared at me, her hand gripping my collar beginning to tremble. I couldn't bear to look into those eyes that seemed ready to devour me alive, so I quickly averted my gaze. I straightened my suit and pressed my lips together, fighting to keep the blood from rising in my throat. I offered no answer. Olivia let out a heavy sigh and finally released her grip on my collar. She had been holding me so tightly that when she suddenly let go, I lost my balance. My legs gave out, and I collapsed onto my knees right in front of her. She looked down at me and let out a cold laugh. From this moment on, Lucas Miller, you are officially finished in this business. I will use every connection and every resource I have. Anyone who dares to help you will find themselves an enemy of Olivia Hayes. Even if you spend the rest of your life kneeling and begging for work like you are today, no one will ever show you a shred of pity. Olivia leaned down, her gaze burning with a fierce, calculated malice as she locked eyes with me. Lucas Miller, I'm going to make your life a living hell, just like how you left me with nowhere to turn. I still didn't dare to look up at her. The pain in my chest felt like someone was driving a blade into me over and over again. My lips trembled as I struggled to speak. The letter of intent, I've already discussed it with Mr. Vance. Could you please, just this once? I started. But she turned away sharply and gave a cold command to her bodyguard. Get this pathetic wretch out of my sight. Throw him out. And make sure you throw him far, she added. I struggled desperately, trying to break free from the bodyguard's iron grip. I just needed this one last payout. Once I had that money, I could finally go and die with a clean conscience. I didn't want any of my mess to splash back on Olivia after I was gone. As I was being dragged away, I used the last of my strength to shout toward her. Just this one last contract, Miss Hayes. If you just let me sign this, you can have my life. I swear it. I screamed. Olivia just stared at me, her expression one of naked, absolute contempt. Lucas Miller, do you honestly think your life is worth anything to me anymore? She asked coldly. Looking at her utterly indifferent face, the last pillar of strength holding me up finally crumbled. I stopped fighting and let the bodyguards drag me out. They threw me onto the steps of the hotel entrance, and my body slammed hard against the marble floor. A thick metallic taste of blood immediately surged up my throat. My body convulsed, and I vomited a large pool of blood. I pushed myself up from the ground, a disheveled mess, and stumbled toward the curb. I had to get to the hospital. I couldn't die yet. I still had one last debt to settle. When the taxi pulled up to the hospital, I practically fell out of the car and used the last of my energy to dash toward the entrance. But it was already too late. I collapsed on the hospital steps and took my final breath right there. My consciousness suddenly felt weightless, floating upward uncontrollably. A second later, I found myself drifting beside Olivia Hayes. I assumed she would head straight home, but to my surprise, she went to the production office instead. The office was shrouded in darkness as she sat alone on the sofa with her eyes closed, lost in thought. A noise came from the doorway, and I instinctively tried to hide behind the door before realizing I was dead. I was nothing more than a shadow that no one could see. I drifted quietly over to Olivia's side and looked toward the door with her. Kevin Vance pushed the door open, his hands full of shopping bags, and spotted her on the sofa immediately. That donut shop you like on Maple Street was already closed, he said. So I went somewhere else. Give these a try and see if they're to your liking. Kevin began pulling items out of the bags one by one. He arranged the bags in front of Olivia and carefully handed her a pair of disposable gloves. Olivia pulled them on and picked up a donut, taking a small bite. The second it touched her tongue, she grimaced and spat it out. This isn't right, she snapped. It's way too sweet and greasy. Don't ever buy these again. Seeing that picky, disgusted expression on her face made my non-existent heart ache. I desperately wanted to reach out and hold her hand, but my fingers passed right through her. I couldn't even brush against her fingertip. That shop on Maple Street had been my favorite spot back in college. Olivia didn't like the flavor at first, but I used to pester her every single day, begging her to go with me. Eventually, she grew to love those donuts as much as I did, and we both became addicted. In recent years, the elderly couple who ran the place had slowed down, only making 100 donuts a day. If you arrived late, you got nothing. I was always the lazy one with a sweet tooth, constantly promising we would go line up early in the morning, only to oversleep every single time. Yet, without fail, Olivia would always appear before me with a box of fresh, warm donuts. The sweet aroma would fill the air. I knew she had crawled out of bed before dawn just to stand in line for me. Looking at her soft, beautiful face back then, I made a silent vow to myself over and over. I promised to marry her, to stay by her side forever, and to make sure she was always happy. But then, my production company ran into serious trouble. To prevent her career from being dragged down with me, I gritted my teeth and forced her to divorce me. After the split, I found I was perfectly capable of waking up early to wait in line, but the donuts I bought for myself never tasted the same. What exactly is missing from these donuts? I wondered. Is Maple Street really the only place you'll eat from? Kevin asked, his patience wearing thin. He tossed the disposable gloves onto the table. Even though he was trying to suppress his temper, the sound of his hand hitting the table was sharp and loud. Olivia glanced up at him, her voice freezing and laced with irritation. I didn't exactly force you to go, did I? She said. Kevin frowned and walked around the table to her side. He reached out and draped an arm over her shoulder, softening his tone to appease her. Fine, I'll get up early tomorrow and go to your favorite spot, okay? Seeing Kevin's hand on Olivia's shoulder sent a wave of bitterness through me. But I also understood that she couldn't stay alone forever. Besides, I was already dead. Olivia shrugged his hand off and turned her head away. Kevin, just go. I want to be by myself for a while. By yourself. Kevin let out a cold laugh, his tone suddenly turning sharp. Olivia, don't think I'm blind. You're thinking about crawling back to Lucas Miller, aren't you? Who was it 3 years ago that begged me to use my influence to sabotage his salary and contracts? And when the company's cash flow started drying up, weren't you the one whispering in my ear, telling me exactly what to do? When the company was finally on the brink of collapse, you were desperate to kick Lucas out. You were terrified that if he stayed any longer, he'd realize what was going on and expose you, letting the Miller family crush you and end your career. But you never expected him to be the one to ask for the divorce first. Then you told me to use the Vance family's media connections to spin the story, making sure the whole world believed Lucas was the one who forced you into it. You turned yourself into the tragic victim, the one who was forced to sign and driven into a corner. For 3 years, I went against my family's wishes to help you take that production company public. I greased the palms of the judges and paved the way for your awards, making you the star you are today. You promised that once you won that Oscar, you'd marry me. Are you trying to back out now? You should know very well that just as I put you on that pedestal, I can make sure you come crashing down and lose everything overnight. Kevin stared intensely at Olivia, his eyes dark and piercing as if trying to look right through her. I stared at Olivia as well, my pupils shrinking in sheer shock. Every hardship I had endured over the last 3 years felt like it was crumbling into dust at that very moment. I paced frantically around Olivia, desperately waiting for her to speak up, for her to tell me that Kevin was full of lies. I needed her to say she had never done those things. Instead, Olivia stood on her tiptoes and pressed her lips against Kevin's. Her eyes held a calculated, seductive charm. Honey, why would I ever want to go back on my word? She whispered, her voice sickeningly sweet. I watched them in a passionate embrace, my mind descending into a chaotic buzz. I clutched my head, desperate to escape. I lunged toward the door, only to be slammed back by a blinding flash of white light. My entire form was tossed backward. I collapsed onto the floor in total despair, instinctively pounding my fist against my chest where my heart used to be. But I felt nothing, not even a spark of pain. It was as if my chest was completely hollow. I covered my ears, trying to shut out the nauseating sounds of their affection, but it was useless. No matter how hard I tried, I could hear every single word and sound. I curled up in a corner, my mind flooded with memories of Olivia. I was the illegitimate son the Miller family refused to acknowledge. My mother had passed away from complications during my birth, never making it off the operating table. From that day on, the Miller family treated me with nothing but cold indifference. Most people didn't even know I was one of them. I learned early on that I wouldn't get a single cent from the Miller estate. If I wanted to live with any dignity, I had to carve out my own path. Right after graduation, I went out on my own and set my sights on the then emerging market for short-form web series. Olivia and I had discussed the potential of this niche for a long time. She agreed it was a risk worth taking. So, we decided to launch our own studio together the moment we graduated. We pooled every penny we had and rented a tiny apartment near campus to officially begin our entrepreneurial journey. Back then, short web series were exploding in popularity, so we dove in head first. I was quick-witted and a decent writer, so I handled the scripts, the creative direction, and all the post-production work. Olivia was beautiful and had a great screen presence, so she became our leading lady. We worked tirelessly every day producing content, but we had almost no followers, let alone any brand deals or sponsorships. In less than 3 months, our funds were completely drained, and we couldn't even cover the rent. The landlord eventually threw all of our belongings onto the sidewalk and slammed the door with a blunt order to get lost. It was a freezing, snowy night as Olivia and I wandered the streets dragging our suitcases. We felt the last $10 in our pockets and discussed finding a hot meal first. Our plan was to film one final video to put a period on this failed business venture. After that, we'd both go find normal jobs. We were working on a serialized drama at the time, and I had written a special series finale to give a proper ending. We just wanted to end things with a little dignity. Who would have guessed that at that exact moment, one of our previous episodes would go viral? The view count started skyrocketing until it actually broke 100 million. That night, Olivia and I sat huddled under an overpass, each clutching a cup of instant noodles, screaming until our voices were raw with excitement. The metrics kept climbing, and followers were pouring in by the thousands. Olivia and I rode that wave of momentum, quickly landing several sponsorship deals. We even started live stream selling to boost our income. By our second year after graduation, the company had over 100 employees, and we were officially financially independent. Our little studio naturally evolved into a legitimate film production company. Once the company's valuation reached hundreds of millions, we began preparing for an IPO. All the preliminary work was already in place. But right at that critical moment, Olivia's talent contract was flagged for legal issues, and an investigation was launched. The funding we had secured for our new series evaporated instantly, and sponsors and investors began pulling out one after another. Overnight, we were right back where we started. I stared at the pile of flawed contracts and the chaotic financial reports on my desk. Then I looked up at Olivia, whose face was even paler than mine. I forced myself to swallow the words of blame that were on the tip of my tongue. I simply told her that it was normal for her to miss those legal and financial traps since she wasn't an accountant or a lawyer. Life has its ups and downs, I said, and as long as we're still here and healthy, we can always make a comeback. I never could have imagined that a simple stomach ache would be the thing that dragged me into the abyss of cancer. It wasn't just any stomach cancer, it was poorly differentiated signet ring cell carcinoma. It was the most aggressive and lethal kind. The 5-year survival rate was less than 10%. My oncologist told me that we had caught it in the early stages. He said if I committed to the treatment, there was a real chance for a cure. He kept urging me not to give up, but I didn't check in right away. I turned and walked out as the doctor let out a frustrated sigh. When I got back to the office, it was a total disaster, with over 800 debt collection messages lighting up my phone every day. On top of that, the Miller family was putting immense pressure on me, trying to force me to hand over all my shares in the company. I gritted my teeth and made the hardest decision of my life. I took on all the debt myself and forced Olivia to divorce me. Over the next 3 years, I worked myself to the bone to pay back those debts, trading my health for every dollar until my body finally collapsed. Even knowing I didn't have much time left, I was stubborn. I believed the debt must be paid and what was started must be finished. I endured endless agony and suffering, only to find out in the end that this was all a trap set by Olivia. I looked at the two of them on the office sofa, their clothes disheveled and their faces filled with post-coital satisfaction. The sight was so repulsive, I wanted to lunge forward and tear them to pieces. Kevin was nuzzling Olivia's neck, whispering, "When we get married, I want Lucas Miller to be there to see it." His words were cut short by the sudden ringing of a phone. Olivia answered it, and her expression instantly darkened. Without a word of explanation, she grabbed her coat and bolted out the door. "You're lying. How could Lucas Miller possibly be dead?" the voice on the other end must have said. The morgue at night was desolate and freezing, the kind of cold that makes your skin crawl. One step inside, and the chills seeped straight into your marrow. Olivia arrived at a run, her coat haphazardly thrown over her shoulders. The crystal Chanel button on her chest was even fastened into the wrong buttonhole. Her long, cascading hair was a tangled mess over her shoulders despite her attempts to smooth it down. She stood silently beside my corpse, her head bowed in a silence so deep I couldn't guess her thoughts. I drifted right beside her, following her gaze. There I was, cold, motionless, and utterly lifeless, lying on the steel tray of the morgue locker. I looked incredibly pathetic. I must have hit the marble steps face first when I died, which would explain the fresh lacerations on my skin. The blood on them had already dried completely. I couldn't help but frown, thinking Dr. Carter had been a bit negligent. Now that I was gone, couldn't he have shown a little humanity and wiped my face? He could have at least made me look presentable. Then again, I sighed. Over the past 3 years of intermittent treatments, I had racked up a massive debt at the hospital. I had intended to pay Dr. Carter back in full once I'd settled all my other outstanding obligations. The poor man really had some rotten luck being stuck with a patient like me. Olivia, who had been standing as still as a statue next to me, suddenly took a slow step forward. She stared at me for a long, long time, and then, inexplicably, she let out a short laugh. "Lucas Miller, is this your way of trying to scare me as some kind of revenge?" she asked. "I only made you drink 1 bottle of whiskey. You really came all the way here to play dead, just to freak me out? Did you honestly think I'd fall for such a clumsy trick?" Olivia suddenly grabbed me and yanked me up from the cold steel tray, her fingers digging into my shoulders. Her eyes were burning with rage as she glared intently at my lifeless face. "Lucas Miller, I'm warning you, don't overplay your hand. Even if you actually are dead, I won't be the one to claim your body. There's no way in hell I'm giving you a funeral. All these years, did you really think I didn't know what you were up to? You made a show of cutting ties with the Miller family and keeping your hands clean, but I know you were secretly in contact with them the whole time. You just wanted to use our production company as a stepping stone to crawl back into the Miller's good graces. That's exactly why I teamed up with Kevin Vance to tear the company apart. This company is my life's work. It was my only chance to escape my past and climb the social ladder. I wanted to be famous. I wanted a seat at the very top of the Hollywood food chain. I couldn't just stand by and watch you hand it over to the Miller family on a silver platter. Seeing the sheer resentment etched on Olivia's face, my pupils dilated in shock. It turned out she had been guarding herself against me from the very beginning. When the company first started taking off, the Miller family had indeed approached me multiple times. They suggested merging our company into their conglomerate, but I turned them down every single time. Later, they began to threaten me, using some of my mother's heirlooms as leverage. They tried to force my hand into a partnership, warning me that if I didn't comply, they would systematically dismantle our company. Once I saw the Miller family's greedy true colors, I dug my heels in and fought back. During that period, the company definitely took some heavy hits because of their retaliation. The reason I never told Olivia was that I didn't want her to worry. I was also afraid she would do something impulsive and pick a fight with the Miller family on my behalf, making enemies she couldn't afford to have. I didn't want to jeopardize her career or her state of mind. I didn't want her distracted while she was on set. It never occurred to me that she already knew about those meetings and had twisted them into evidence that I was trying to suck up to the Millers. She never even asked me for my side of the story. Instead, she went straight to Kevin Vance and conspired with him to set a trap for me. I could never have imagined that the woman I loved and protected with my life was spending every night doubting and plotting against me the moment we finally tasted success. A sudden noise came from behind us, and Olivia quickly laid me back down on the cold steel tray. She smoothed out the hem of her coat and glanced over her shoulder. Spotting Dr. Ben Carter in his white lab coat, she let out a cold snort and pointed a finger at him. Her face was a messy cocktail of conflicting emotions. "You're my ex-husband's primary physician, aren't you? Come and look at this. Isn't he just playing dead to get a rise out of me?" she asked. Dr. Carter roughly shook off Olivia's hand and pointed at my cold body, glaring at her with pure fury. "I'm Lucas Miller's oncologist. We detected a massive amount of alcohol in his system. I've already called the police, and they have officially opened an investigation. The police have already verified the details with the hotel. Shortly before his death, Lucas Miller was maliciously forced to consume a large quantity of high-proof liquor. This caused a rapid and fatal deterioration of his condition, leading to sudden cardiac arrest. I expect the police will be coming for you very soon. I hope you can keep up this act of knowing nothing when they arrive." Olivia swayed slightly, her gaze falling back onto my body. A flicker of genuine panic crossed her eyes. "It can't be," she whispered under her breath. "How could he actually be dead?" As dawn broke, I followed Olivia Hayes to the police station. Kevin Vance and Dr. Ben Carter arrived shortly after one another. The moment he saw Olivia, Kevin hurried to her side and took her hand in a firm grip. His expression was a complicated mix of emotions, but he couldn't quite hide the smug twitch at the corner of his mouth. "Olivia, is Lucas Miller really gone?" he asked. Olivia looked at him with a slight frown, her eyes flashing with blatant irritation. "You're happy about it, aren't you?" she countered. Kevin froze for a second, then let out a cold laugh and dropped Olivia's hand. "What makes you think I'm happy? I'm just concerned that his death is going to bring a lot of unwanted attention our way. I'm worried about you, Olivia," he insisted. Olivia shoved her hands in her coat pockets, her knuckles white with tension, but she kept her head down and remained silent. Looking at her, I actually felt a strange pang of pity for Kevin. On the surface, Olivia was a yes woman to him, always acting the part of the pleaser. But knowing her as well as I did, I could tell she didn't have a shred of genuine affection for the man. She was likely only with Kevin to secure the company's IPO and those prestigious awards. I shook my head with a bitter smile. This woman would truly sacrifice anything for the sake of her career. A police officer brought out my personal belongings. They had likely been collected from my apartment by Dr. Carter. My health had been on a steady decline for 2 years. In the last 2 months, severe anemia had caused me to pass out in the street on several occasions. I had been terrified of collapsing somewhere with no one to handle my remains, so I'd given a spare key to Dr. Carter. I never thought he'd actually end up needing to use it. The officer turned his gaze toward Olivia. "Are you Lucas Miller's ex-wife?" he asked. Olivia's brow furrowed as she looked at the items in his hand before slowly nodding her head. The officer handed her a folder stuffed with documents. "These are the outstanding debts the deceased had yet to settle. Our records show that these were originally joint debts incurred during your marriage. The deceased eventually managed to transfer all those debts solely into his own name. This is the last remaining balance. Every other debt he owed has been paid off in full." The officer slid a thick stack of transaction records toward her. "The total comes to $50 million. These payments were made progressively by the deceased leading up to his death. Take a look and see if you have any questions." Olivia gripped the unpaid bill, her eyes locked on the transaction records as she stood there, completely stunned. "This can't be right," she murmured to herself in disbelief. Wasn't the company's debt settled a long time ago? Why was he the one paying it back? And why did he take it all on by himself? What about the Miller family? Did they really not lift a finger to help him? The officer frowned and rummaged through the files for a moment before pulling out a specific document and placing it on the table. It was a formal notice of disinheritance from the Miller family, along with a statement I had signed personally, voluntarily assuming full responsibility for all the debts. "It's all right here. You can read it for yourself," the officer said. Olivia clutched the papers, her face as white as a sheet. She whipped her head around to glare at Kevin, her eyes burning with uncontrollable fury. "Why was Lucas paying for these debts? After he left the company, you told me you were going to pay back all the money you'd embezzled. So why was he the one paying for it?" Looking guilty, Kevin's face darkened as he started to fish for an excuse, but he was coldly cut off by Dr. Carter. The doctor glared at Kevin and Olivia with pure indignation. I honestly feel sick thinking about what that poor fool, Lucas, went through for you, he spat. When the company got into trouble, he was terrified the Miller family would seize the opportunity to kick you while you were down. To make sure you could keep living your high-flying life, he took every single debt onto his own shoulders. He even cut ties with his family so he could shoulder the burden of that money alone. He was in the early stages of stomach cancer back then. He could have been cured, but he kept putting off the hospital, dragging his feet until the cancer reached the terminal stage. Last week I spent ages begging him to check in immediately. He told me he couldn't because he had to sign a contract for one last show. He said that once he signed that deal and got the advance payment, all the debts would finally be cleared. Lucas Miller didn't want you to be burdened with a single cent of debt. He didn't want to owe you anything, even in death. And now you're telling me that the money had already been paid back. Do you two have any conscience at all? Dr. Carter's face was livid, and his gaze toward Olivia was filled with utter loathing. As he spoke, Olivia's face gradually darkened like a storm rolling in. She whirled around to face Kevin. So all of this was your doing? What happened to the money Lucas was paying back? Panicked by her stare, Kevin grabbed her arm, a clear flash of anxiety in his eyes. Olivia, this isn't the place to talk about this. We're in a police station, for God's sake. Let's just go home and talk about this calmly, okay? He pleaded. Olivia shoved his hand away, her expression terrifyingly cold. Fine, you won't tell me? Then I'll find out for myself. She looked down and pulled out her phone to start dialing. Standing beside her, Kevin grew desperate and reached out to snatch the phone from her hand. I'm telling you one more time, I will give you an explanation for this. Olivia's rage hit the breaking point as she glared at him. Kevin Vance, give me back my phone right now. Kevin's eyes darted around nervously as he looked at her with growing unease. Do you really have to do this right now? He asked. Watching him, I suddenly realized that the last 3 years of my life had been one massive, cosmic joke. Every cent I had nearly killed myself to earn had ended up lining Kevin Vance's pockets. Olivia kept her eyes fixed on him while Kevin bit his lip, refusing to say another word. Dr. Carter watched the scene unfold, clearly having pieced the whole puzzle together. He roared at her, Olivia Hayes, are you still too blind to see what's happening? That scumbag stole every single penny that idiot Lucas Miller nearly died to earn. He pocketed it all for himself. At Dr. Carter's words, Olivia swung her hand and delivered a stinging slap across Kevin Vance's face. The sound of the slap was so loud that even the bystanders were stunned into silence. Kevin stood there in shock, clutching his rapidly swelling cheek, and snarled at Olivia, You bitch! You actually dared to hit me. He lunged forward and grabbed a fistful of Olivia's hair, cursing at her. Who was the one crying and begging me to help kick Lucas Miller out of the company in the first place? Since you were cold-hearted enough to throw him out, why the hell do you care if he's dead or alive? If you actually gave a damn about him, why were you sneaking around behind his back to see me? Olivia Hayes, you are nothing but a hypocritical, shameless bitch. You do all the dirty work in the shadows and then expect the whole world to treat you like some kind of innocent saint. I'll tell you the truth. That company isn't even yours anymore. It belongs to the Vance family now. I really ought to thank you for that. You haven't the slightest clue how to run a business, yet you're too arrogant to admit it. How else do you think I was able to snag a massive, profitable production company without spending a single cent of my own money in just 3 years? The nearby officers saw the situation escalating and moved in to separate them. Dr. Carter rushed over and whispered to them, Don't stop them yet. Keep listening, there's definitely more they haven't confessed to. Their accounting and taxes are almost certainly crooked as well, the doctor added. The officers shared a look and hesitantly stepped back. Seeing Dr. Carter stand up for me like that made me lower my head and crack a faint, bittersweet smile. In these last 3 years, Dr. Carter was the only one who actually looked out for me. Olivia was shaking with pure rage after Kevin's outburst, and she lunged forward, kicking him hard in the knee. Kevin stumbled, lost his balance, and collapsed onto the floor. Olivia stood over him, glaring with murderous intent. "What did you just say?" she hissed through gritted teeth. "I trusted you with everything, and you were stabbing me in the back the whole time?" Kevin sneered as he pushed himself up, reaching for her hair again. Olivia finally snapped, throwing herself at him like a wild animal as they tumbled into a chaotic brawl. Watching them tear into each other like that only made me sigh in resignation. When they were playing house, they had conspired together to drive me into the ground. Now that they've turned on each other, they've abandoned even the slightest shred of dignity. I wondered if Olivia felt a single ounce of regret for the way she had plotted against me. The fight grew more violent, and they were soon covered in bruises and gasping for air. The police finally stepped in to restrain them, citing assault and potentially more serious charges as they prepared to take their statements. Kevin immediately pulled out his phone and called his lawyer. After hanging up, he looked at Olivia with nothing but disdain. "I actually planned to wait until we were married before officially putting the company in my name," he said. "But since everything is out in the open now, I don't see any reason to keep up the act. From here on out, you're on your own. If you have a problem, take it up with my legal team." Olivia stared blankly as Kevin hurried away with his lawyer, looking as if the soul had been sucked right out of her. She stood frozen, biting her lip for a long time, before finally turning toward Dr. Carter. "I'm not going to hire a lawyer to get me out of this. I owe this much to Lucas. I know it's incredibly selfish of me to ask for anything right now, but I have one request. Can you keep Lucas's body at the hospital for a little longer? I want to be the one to see him off." Dr. Carter's brow furrowed in annoyance. "Don't you dare start acting like the grieving widow in front of me," he snapped. "If it weren't for you, Lucas wouldn't have died this soon. He actually had a chance to hold on a bit longer. He was a terminal cancer patient, and you people were forcing high-proof liquor down his throat. You aren't even human, you're monsters. And you have the nerve to say you want to see him off? With everything you've done, wouldn't your presence just be a curse on his soul? If I were in your shoes, the first thing I'd do when I got out of here is go after that man with everything I had. He didn't just kill Lucas, he destroyed you too. Even if you're planning on ending it all, you should at least make sure he goes down with you." I honestly wanted to punch Dr. Carter after hearing that. What was wrong with the man? I was already dead and gone. Regardless of how it happened, he shouldn't be egging Olivia on to go on some revenge mission against Kevin. Olivia looked at him with an expression of pure hopelessness, her lips trembling, but no words came out. Dr. Carter just rolled his eyes and walked out of the interrogation room. I tried to drift out after him, but just as I reached the station exit, a powerful force yanked me back. In the blink of an eye, I was tethered right back to Olivia's side. Because I had been a terminal cancer patient and Kevin Vance had thrown enough money at the problem for settlements or legal maneuvering, the police only held Olivia Hayes for 3 days. The very first thing she did after being released was head straight to the hospital to find Dr. Ben Carter. The moment he saw her, he didn't even bother to hide his disgust. "Olivia Hayes, did you not understand a word I said the other day? You are not welcome here," he said. Olivia spoke in a low, broken voice. "I know I was wrong. I'm so sorry, Lucas. I just want to see him one last time. Please, I'm begging you, just let me look at him." Seeing the sheer agony on Olivia's face, I frowned and turned toward Dr. Carter. "Just let her see me. Let her have her closure so I can finally leave this world for good. I really don't want to be tethered to her side anymore." During those 3 days she was locked up, it suddenly hit me that I never truly knew her at all. These last 3 years had acted like a blade, carving her into a completely different person. The lively, cheerful Olivia who used to smile at me was gone forever. The woman standing here now was emotionally unstable and prone to exploding at the slightest provocation. I actually started to wonder if she had developed some kind of personality disorder. If I stayed tied to her much longer, this erratic woman was going to end up scaring what was left of my soul away. Dr. Carter let out a weary sigh and pulled out a set of keys, leading Olivia to the memorial hall where my remains are being kept. "Go on, and after you've seen him, make sure you get revenge for Lucas Miller." Olivia didn't say a word as she hurried inside. Dr. Carter just shook his head and walked away. Olivia stared at the urn containing my ashes and suddenly collapsed on her knees. She knelt on the freezing floor and began to sob uncontrollably, her voice broken and jagged. Lucas, I was so wrong. I should never have doubted you. I should never have been so greedy. These last 3 years with Kevin, I wasn't happy for a single second. You know how I am. I was never good at hiding how I felt. My emotions were always written all over my face. She couldn't even finish the sentence before she slumped onto the floor, crying so hard she could barely catch her breath. After a long while, she stood up and delicately cradled my urn in her arms. I should have found out the truth about what was going on with the Miller family. At the very least, I should have asked you if that was what you really wanted. But by then, I was already tangled up with Kevin. He was intentionally driving a wedge between us, making everything sound so much worse than it was. He pressured me to kick you out, telling me it was the only way he would pull strings with the judges and help me win those awards. I was so blinded by my ambition that I actually believed him. I never thought I'd fall for his trap so easily, and it ended up causing you so much pain. If I had only known sooner that you were sick, I never would have done any of it. Lucas, I promise I will get revenge for you. Even if it costs me my life, I'm going to settle this score. As she spoke, Olivia began scrolling through endless financial spreadsheets on her phone. She exported the data and compiled it into a single file. Then, she uploaded the entire document to a website. Looking at the screen, it was clearly the IRS whistleblower portal. Afterward, Olivia continued to pour out her heart, rambling on about her regrets and apologizing over and over. Watching her, I could only shake my head with a bitter smile. You were the one who chose to betray me. So what good is all this talking now? The moon was high in the sky by the time Olivia Hayes finally left the memorial hall. She had her driver take her straight to Kevin Vance's front door. Kevin's front door was left slightly ajar, as if he had been expecting her. As soon as Olivia stepped inside, Kevin spoke with a voice full of contempt. Back so soon, are we? I thought you'd try to freeze me out for a lot longer than this. I guess I overestimated you. I've already laid out some clothes for you. Go change, and then come back here and kneel for my forgiveness. If I'm in a good enough mood, I might even keep you around as a little plaything. Olivia looked at him with a cold laugh. Not in your wildest dreams, Kevin. I've already been in contact with the shareholders. I still have my shares, and no one is taking them from me. You think you own this company now? You're delusional. Kevin threw his head back and laughed, his face full of smug triumph. I am Dreamin. I am the majority shareholder and the legal representative. The entire film library and all the copyrights are registered in my name. You signed every single one of those documents yourself? Or did you forget? I just haven't made it public yet. Those idiots at the office haven't the faintest clue what's really going on. Olivia clenched her fists so hard her knuckles turned white, her entire body trembling. That's impossible. I never saw anything like that, let alone signed it. Kevin stood up and looked at Olivia with a manic laugh. Don't you remember how you tricked Lucas Miller back in the day? He trusted you implicitly. You could throw any contract in front of him, and he'd sign it without even looking. I simply took a page out of your playbook and did the exact same thing to you. Olivia Hayes, you're the one who's truly heartless. Lucas Miller treated you like royalty. He even split the company's shares 50-50 with you. But you could never get enough, could you? Olivia was shaking with a rage that threatened to boil over. I'm calling the police. This is fraud, plain and simple. Kevin raised an eyebrow and laughed. Go ahead, call them. Let everyone who spent years attacking Lucas Miller on your behalf see the truth. Let them see exactly how you systematically drove him into a corner until he had nothing left. The words had barely left his mouth when Olivia lunged for a fruit knife in a bowl nearby and threw herself at him. I didn't come here tonight with any intention of leaving alive, she screamed. I'm going to get justice for Lucas Miller. I'm going to kill you. You deserve to rot. Seeing the knife in Olivia's hand made my non-existent heart skip a beat. Kevin tried to dodge out of the way, but Olivia was too fast. The blade sank straight into his chest. Help! She's killing me. Someone call an ambulance, he shrieked. Kevin screamed at the top of his lungs for the butler, who came rushing into the room. By the time the butler reached the living room, Kevin was slumped on the sofa, blood gushing from his chest and soaking his entire shirt. Olivia spat in his face. This is all your fault. You were the one who poisoned my relationship with Lucas. You crawled into my life on purpose just to whisper lies about him in my ear. I wronged Lucas, but you destroyed him. And you actually thought the Vance family was going to swallow our company whole? Kevin Vance, not in a million years. Olivia suddenly burst into a manic laughter. I've already handed every shred of evidence over to the IRS. We're going to hell together. Olivia threw her head back and laughed, a sound that was cold and deeply unsettling. She wrenched the knife out of Kevin's chest and plunged it into her own with a single, violent motion. She collapsed onto the floor, blood rapidly blooming across her clothes. In her final moments, she stared fixedly at the diamond ring on her finger. Lucas, wait for me. I'm coming to tell you how sorry I am. We could be together again on the other side. This time, I swear, I'll only ever love you. The moment Olivia took her last breath, I felt my spirit become significantly lighter. To make sure I never had to cross paths with her ever again, I began to drift upward, climbing higher and higher. It's one thing to love the wrong person once in a lifetime, but you can't afford to make that mistake over and over. Taking a wrong turn once is just bad luck, but diving headfirst into the same trap repeatedly is just plain stupidity. I don't know how long I drifted, but suddenly the world brightened and a blinding white light exploded before me. A second later, I vanished completely. Goodbye, Olivia Hayes. With any luck, we'll never see each other again. True sacrifice is a silent bridge built over a river of betrayal. It is a gift given to those who may never deserve it. But when a soul finally breaks free from the chains of a one-sided devotion, the greatest mercy is not forgiveness, but the courage to vanish into the light, leaving the echoes of remorse to wander the darkness alone. To love is to give, but to leave is to finally belong to oneself.